Everybody, thanks for coming back. For those of you who've been here through all 3 sessions, great. This is our last session, and I'm really excited because I think Diane has some wonderful things to share with you. And our very first session was about the language of love, and she's going to hit specifically on things that help us with the language with our kids. So, without further ado, this is Diane Hobbs. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, and I also want to say thank you to Love, who was kind enough to reach out to me this summer, I think, and give me a chance to be here. So it's a real honor, and I wanted to just compliment all of you on picking a church for your children that is showing so much support for families. I think that's really special. I think it's really important today, and it shows how much you care if you pick such a wonderful place. I think it's fabulous that they put on a parenting series here. It speaks volumes about the kind of people that you have in your church. I wanted to tell you a little bit about me. I have 4 children, I have a boy and 3 daughters. I have a son who's 12, a daughter who is almost 11, another who's 9, and another who's 7. A few years ago, and I used to be a teacher. I taught 2nd grade at a private school for a while. Before that, I worked for ABC News in New York City for about 10 years. And realized that was going to be a difficult job to do with a family. So my mother-in-law was a teacher and encouraged me to go into teaching, and it was great, and I loved it, and I didn't have discipline problems in my classroom. I maintained a very, very stable classroom, but having my own children was different. And a few years ago, active parenting fell into my lap, and it literally changed my life with my children. There's a calm in my household now that didn't exist before. I have a relationship, a level of communication with my kids that's so much deeper than it was before. And I now have a set of tools to help me with so many of the things that I go through with my children. So I really enjoy sharing it. And so this is what I do now. I speak to groups, and I also give 5-part parenting series. I'm giving one in Darien and one in New Canaan right now. So, and that, okay, so just back briefly, just wanted to mention spirituality and church are so important to our children's health as they grow up, particularly in this world. I mean, how many of you would say it's harder to raise children today than when you were growing up? Would one of the #1 reasons be because of all of the electronics and access? I think so too. And a big part of being a parent is trying to, it's very hard to eliminate negative influences, but at least keep them at bay. And that is really hard when there's 24/7 connectivity. So I feel like now it's more important than ever that we have this communication with our children, because if they don't feel comfortable coming to us, there are a lot of places they can go for information that is wrong, and also places that are unsafe. So having a church and having spirituality is so important, because now your kids will not only have you in your home, but they have a haven to go to and a whole community of people who care about them and also want the same things for the children in their community. All of this fell into my lap because we had a guy, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit further, named Joe Califano, who wrote this book. It's a very good book. You can get it on Amazon. It's called How to Raise a Drug-Free Kid. And it's a research-based book. So everything in this book, it's years of research. And within his research, he talks about, there's, I think, 9 ways that parents can help to engage with their children in ways that will keep them safe. Number 7 is incorporate religious and spiritual practices into family life. And this is research. The kids that had religion in their life are less likely to get involved in alcohol and substance abuse. Religion can benefit your children immeasurably, whatever your religion, Buddhist, Catholic, Hindu, Jewish, Mormon, Muslim, Protestant, or if you simply define yourself as spiritual. Sharing your faith with your children will reduce the likelihood that they will abuse harmful substances. Teens who consider religion to be an important part of their lives are far less likely to smoke, drink, or use drugs. Faith is an effective substance abuse prevention tool because it offers people, including children, strength in the face of adversity. He then goes on to talk about another tangible benefit about sharing religious practices with your children is that it strengthens the family bond and provides an opportunity to establish meaningful family rituals. Teens who attend religious services at least once a week are at much lower risk of smoking, drinking, and using drugs than teens who never attend religious services. And it's not likely that teenagers will go to church if a parent doesn't bring them. So you're already on the right path by having picked a wonderful church community. we just talked about this. So the tools I'm going to talk about today are, number one, you matter most. And it doesn't always feel that way when you're a parent, but you are the most important thing in your children's lives, even in high school. Even when your kids are pushing you away, they still hear you. It's the natural course of life that our kids are going to leave the nest, and they are going to want independence, but that doesn't mean they don't need you, love you, and hear you. So keep talking, and any child that's giving you a hard time, infuse them with more love. Just infuse them with love. They need it, and you are so important. We talk about method of choice. I think you've all heard about giving our kids choices. Why do we give them choices? It's important that they have the opportunity to participate. And then we'll talk about teaching responsibility through logical consequences. And this is taking ourselves out of the role of being the punisher or rewarder and really trying to put the onus on our kids to see they make a choice and there's a consequence from the choices they make. And we'll talk about that. And the next one is the 5 steps of active communication. So I'm hoping you'll leave here today with, maybe when your child comes home feeling sad about something, a way to pull more information from them and help them solve a problem rather than taking it over. It may be you diffuse a power struggle by using a method of choice, and it may be helping them build their self-esteem by helping to teach them to become confident decision makers, which you can do through method of choice. And we'll talk about all that quickly. So number one, you matter most. So taking the time to be fully engaged with our children is really hard now because of this 24/7 accessibility to devices. And just to remember that this undistracted time with our kids is the most important thing that we can give them. It's the best gift that we can give them, because when we spend time with their children and when we are truly engaged and mindfully with them, what we're saying to them is, we value you as people. We like spending time with you. We like being with you and fully with you. And that is becoming harder when you've got texts coming at you and emails coming at you and a phone that's buzzing. So I'm asking parents to really start building fences around their time with their kids. Maybe it's deciding to, if you're in your car, putting that phone somewhere where they can't see it, you can't see it, maybe checking your email only at certain times of day, but whatever you can do to build a fence around your personal time with your children, because there's so many things pulling that away from us today. Okay, so the time when we are really engaged with our kids, I'm talking about dribbling a basketball, going for a walk, reading a book, helping them with homework, going to see a movie, but not asking them, did they like it? Asking them, what did you think about that character? Was he a good person? Was he a bad person? Did he make bad choices? Or who did you think about? Did you like that? Who did you like? Tell us who you liked. Tell us who you didn't like. There's a lot that can be taught through movies. And I was just remember when I was on honeymoon with my husband, it was the first time I'd seen Star Wars with my parents, and there was somebody sitting next to us, and it was a British man with a 6-year-old son or 7-year-old son, and he said, what kind of a man do you think Luke Skywalker was? And I thought, nobody ever asked me that question, but that's a really good thing to be thinking about, and also we can sort of gauge our children and what they're thinking. So, and when your child is pushing you away, again, to just remember, keep at it. They love you and they need you. And sometimes we're toughest on the people that we know will always love us, and that's sometimes why our kids will give us a hard time. You might go to pick your child up from a play date, and the person will say, your child was just an angel, and then they get in the car and they're terrible. And you can't figure out why, because they tried so hard to be good on that play date, but once they were with you, they knew they could just let it go. So just knowing that, even at those tough times. So Joe Califano came to New Canaan several years ago, and as I said, he wrote this book, and he was the former Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare from 77 to 79. He worked for LBJ, Nixon, and he also worked for Ford. And when he was working for, he had 5 kids of his own, and when he started the anti-smoking campaign, so it took years to get this into place. So what we're benefiting from today really was started by him. And Betty Ford said to him, Joe, I think it's really great that you care so much about smoking, and that's a wonderful thing, but how about substance abuse? We have a real substance abuse problem in our country. So he took what she said to heart, and he started something called CASA, and you can look at this information online. It's called the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse, and they do a lot of research at Columbia University. So the key thing that he wanted to find out was, why do some kids in the teenage years get involved in drugs and alcohol when other children do not? And so for 20 years they collected data trying to get to the answer for this question. And they spent a lot of time talking to kids and asking them, why did they or why didn't they? And what they came to find out, they were very surprised. They were surprised to find out that even in the teenage years, the kids' parents mattered the most. The kids would say, well, I didn't want to disappoint my parents. So what had happened in these situations is the parents had set high standards. They told their kids why they didn't want them to be involved in these substance abuse things. That they explained the dangers. They got buy-in from their kids, but it wasn't a my way or the highway. It was open communication. It was dialogue. It was here's why we don't want you to do this. It was, we know that people make mistakes, but we are here for you. We love you, and we want to keep you safe. So there was a mutual respect and a back and forth between these kids and the parents. And so even when the teenagers were pushing away and they might be saying, you don't know what you're talking about on the outside, they could still hear their parents on the inside. And this was very surprising. So when we went to hear him a few years ago, I had sort of thought it was going to be about who my kids hung out with, if they picked a good peer group, and certainly that's important. But he said, parents, you are on the front lines of this fight, and you matter most when it comes into these teenage years. But all of this can start young, and we're starting these relationships, as early as we can with our kids. So how do you create open lines of communication, mutual respect, and strong bonds with your kids while still implementing discipline, instilling responsibility, and creating boundaries for our kids? How can you teach them right from wrong without having them be afraid to come talk to you? How can you teach them right from wrong without feeling like you're going to be the bad guy? So this is where this program, Active Parenting, comes in. That fell into my lap. It's been around for 25 years. They have a website. This is the book I use in my class. It's called Active Parenting Now in 3. It's the condensed version. I find by the time I get my kids to bed, I can barely read at night. I'm so tired. So I do the thinner version. They have all kinds of books. They have books for teens. And so what Active Parenting, what their goal is, it was developed by this guy, Dr. Michael Popkin, and it's to protect and prepare our children to survive and thrive in the society in which we live. And by that, we want our kids to get the most out of life. It's about really finding joy, making the right decisions, and thriving, really getting the most out of the world in which we live. And we talk about the world in which we live, and it's different. It's different than when we were kids. And so we have to adapt to the differences in our world and the way it is today. And this program really does a good job of that. So we're going to talk a little bit about styles of parenting. You've probably heard some of these before. And I'm trying to get people to not look at this like it's not about being a bad parent or a good parent. It's just being cognizant of the way you parent. What is your style? Kind of how do you parent? Sort of thinking about that, getting outside of the box and looking at it. So dictator parent, who makes the rules? It would be the parent only. In the doormat style, it would be the child only. And in the active parenting style, it's the parent and child working together. Why? In the dictator format, it's because the parent says so. With the doormat parent, it's just because the child said so. And in the active parenting situation, it's the situation calls for it. And we'll talk about that when we get to logical consequences. How are the rules enforced? With the dictator, it's by punishment and reward only. With the doormat, they're not enforced. And with the active parent, it's natural and logical consequences, problem solving, and encouragement. And we're going to do some of those tools today. So the first thing we're going to talk about is method of choice. I remember hearing when the kids were young, people talking about giving our kids choices, and I thought, what is this choice thing? I can't make everything a choice. I didn't grow up with choices. And I forgot to tell you when I looked at that first slide, after I went to the active parenting course, I realized that I was a dictator, and I had no idea that I was a dictator for so long, and I was getting into battles with my son, who's in 3rd grade. Every single day, I was fighting with him about getting ready for school on time. And it was awful, because he would leave feeling terrible, and I would leave feeling terrible. And then I got these tools, and it really helped me. But I was really surprised, because I didn't think of myself as a dictator until after I watched all these videos and went through the class. So I changed, and life in our house changed. So first, to start off, method of choice. So why is it important to give our kids choices? Well, participation is one of the most powerful forces in existence, and a child is going to resist a parent who robs them of their chance to participate in the decisions that affect their lives. These can be simple decisions like, if there's 2 places that you can handle going to dinner, give them a choice. Would you prefer to go here or there? It's just engaging them in the choices that you make. That's one simple one. And because this empowers our children. And a child who resists, a chance to participate, that's when you're going to get some backlash. They want to participate. You can really diffuse a power struggle by giving choices. As our kids get older, we won't be by their sides. So we want them to be able to make tough decisions when we're not there, because ultimately when someone's going to offer them a beer or say to them, do you want to get in this car, when they know it's not a car that's safe to get into because somebody might have been drinking, these are the decisions they're going to make when we're not in the same room with them. So when they're younger, we're throwing choices at them, then they become confident in their ability to make decisions and to make them quickly. So this builds their self-esteem, and it helps them see that they can direct the choices in their lives. But the way we frame the choices, we can do it so that the values aren't sacrificed. So, for example, and I'll talk to you, as our kids get older, the choices become more open-ended. So with an 8-year-old who comes home and he doesn't want to do his homework, you could say to him, okay, well, you have a choice. I can set the timer for 20 minutes, and you can go do what you want for 20 minutes, but if when the timer is up, I ask you to come back and do your homework, and you don't do it, and this ends up being a struggle, then we can't try this tomorrow night. Or if when you come back to do your homework, it takes you so long that you get to bed later, then we won't be able to do 20 minutes tomorrow. Maybe we'll just do 10, or maybe we won't be able to do it at all. But eventually what you're going to work towards is the 12-year-old who comes out, and you can say to him, hey, do you feel like you have time to go outside and dribble the basketball for a few minutes? Or do you feel like you've got to get started on your homework right now? What's your workload like? And that's something where, they're going to trip up. My son will some nights think he's got it down, at which point I'll say, ooh, was it a good idea that you dribbled the basketball for half an hour? And he was like, no, I kind of didn't manage my time. And so then the next day when he comes home, I'll say, if he goes to take out the basketball, I'll say, remember what happened yesterday? Oh yeah, so let's try to get our homework done first. And so that's what you're trying to work towards, is getting them to really be able to say, is this the right choice for me to go do the fun thing now, or do I need to get the work done first? So it's a great way to sidestep a power struggle. So it's time to go to bed, and your child doesn't want to go to bed. I'd like you to go to bed now, and you're getting, no, I don't want to, yes. So as soon as you're getting the struggle, if you can throw in a choice, then suddenly you get yourself out of the struggle situation and you get into problem solving. So you could say to your child, okay, you have a choice. You can get ready for bed in the next 5 minutes, in which case, if you do, then we're going to have time to read an extra book or play an extra game or do something special. But if you don't get ready in the next 5 minutes, then we're going to have to start. You're not going to get the extra special thing, the time with me, reading a book. Those things will go away. And tomorrow night, we're going to start the whole process earlier, and you're going to start getting ready for bed earlier. The choice is yours. It's up to you, but it's all about the phrasing. So we're not saying, it's putting it, and they are often really responsive to this. And then when they make a good choice, we have to really compliment them and have them see that the choice came from what they did. I'm just going to skip this video because I don't think we have too much time. So logical consequences. So this is where we get into the logical consequences. We can teach our kids through the use of logical consequences. So we can take the choice to the next level. And what we're trying to do with logical consequences, what are they? They're consequences because they result from the choice that the child makes, and they're logical because the consequence is logically connected to the misbehavior or the good behavior. The idea being, if you had a test and you took a lot of time to study for that test, the consequence was good. You did well on a test because you put in that extra effort and you took that extra time. If you finished your homework, but you didn't put it in your bag because you chose to not pack your bag the night before, then there's going to be a consequence that's negative. Yes, you got the homework done, but you didn't complete the whole task because you waited till the next day and were scrambling and you didn't get the homework actually into the teacher. But the idea being that we're trying to phrase things in a way that our kids can see it comes from them. The onus is on them. It's taking ourselves out of being the bad guy and the rewarder and punisher, but directing them to see, you make a choice, and there's a result of that choice. You're in the driver's seat. You're in the driver's seat when you're 6 years old, and we're gonna guide them to make sure that they make good choices, but that they really come from them, because this is gonna build their self-esteem, it's gonna empower them, and it's gonna help them to see, I make a choice, all through life, and that good things or bad things can come from these choices. So responsibility is, accepting that we are the ones who choose our actions and that there are consequences for our actions. So when you're in preschool, our preschool had a rule of don't bring a toy to school, and it was a good rule. If your child sneaks a toy into a bag and brings it to school and the toy gets lost or stolen or broken, it's a good lesson. There was a rule, there was a reason. They made the choice to bring the toy. Running out and buying them a new toy is not going to teach them anything. So that's a perfect way to say to them, I know you like the toy, I know you wanted it to come to school, but there is a reason that there was a rule and you chose to break the rule. And sometimes when you make a bad choice, there's a bad consequence. Just we talked about getting your homework done is your obligation as a student. We want to get to the place where our kids, we're not the one going, get your homework done, get your homework done. Trying to get them to see, I own this homework. So if they forget to bring it in, I would let the school deal with that the first time. Let the kids work with the school on that. If it's happening 2 or 3 times, of course we're going to work with the school and talk to the teacher. But when you talk to the teacher, I think most teachers are going to be on board that you say to them, I'm really trying to get Johnny to be responsible. Here's what we're doing. Can you help me with this? It's okay for him to receive the punishment the first time, and we're trying to come up with things to make it so he does get his homework done. Doing the right thing that because the situation calls for it, and I know you can't read this, but that's that feeling of, say somebody's picking on your friend on the playground, and you either decide to stick up for them or not stick up for them. You have to live with that feeling of, I didn't help out, I feel kind of icky, or I did help out, and boy, I feel good about that. We want that. What we're trying to do with all these parenting tools is to infuse our kids with that moral compass for when we're not there. Accepting accountability for our actions. So this is that if you're on the playground and you're waiting to get online for the slide and Johnny cuts in front of you and you're really mad about it, so you decide to punch Johnny, you're going to have a consequence for that decision. But Johnny didn't do the right thing. No, he didn't do the right thing, but neither did you. And maybe punching Johnny at that moment felt okay, and so you're willing to live with the consequence of doing that thing. But the choice was made by that child. Johnny cut in front of you, it wasn't right, you had a choice. You could have told me you didn't like it, but by punching him, you broke the rule, and there's a consequence. Whether the person who did the thing to you was right or wrong, how you reacted has a consequence to it. Okay, so logical consequences can help to teach our children responsibility because they format the discipline in a way where they're making the choice. So responsibility equals choice plus consequence. That's really what this is all about. My 5th grader, he had an opportunity where he took a test, and at the end of the test they had extra credit questions. And he came home from the test and he goes, I took this test today, and he goes, Mom, at the end they had extra credit questions, and I just decided not to do them. And I said, oh. The old me would have been like, why didn't you decide that? That was a terrible choice. So I said, oh, so why did you decide not to do it? He goes, well, I think I did really well in it, and I just didn't feel like it. And I said, okay. And the next day he came home and he goes, I didn't do so great on that test. He goes, I got a good grade, but I would have gotten an A if I'd done the extra credit. And I said, well, what did you learn from that? And he said, I learned that next time I think I'd like to do the extra credit questions. So that's just a perfect example of making a choice. So the difference between logical consequences and punishment are, let me go through this little series of these. Okay, so logical consequences, they're logically connected to the misbehavior. So in my family, when my child was doing something wrong, whether it was punching a sibling, getting up from the dinner table, not cleaning up a mess, everything, I knew that the way I could make my children uncomfortable was to take away dessert. So it became kind of comical because everything that they were doing wrong, I would take away dessert, but I didn't have enough dessert to go around for all these things. It started to get really ridiculous, and then I thought, okay, so say my daughter comes home in high school, and I hope she never comes home having drunk anything, but if she does, what am I going to say? Like, no chocolate for a month? Like, where is this going? So, and what I was really trying to do was, they were making me uncomfortable, so I was going to retaliate by making them feel uncomfortable, and then they'd stop doing what I want them to stop doing. And that's the thing, that this kind of punishment can work in the short term. They will maybe stop doing the bad thing, but they're not doing it for the right reason. They're doing it because they don't want you to take away the thing that they like. So, and then also this eventually creates resentment between the child and the parent. So we don't want to have that. So, so a logical consequence would be your child's dumped Legos all over the floor, and you can take this with every age. You know, you're just gonna. It's the same methodology as the kids are older. You're just going to be rephrasing, you know, whatever it is. So we'll start with the Legos. They've dumped the Legos on the floor, at which point you're going to say to them, I'd like you to pick up the Legos. And where before, if my child had said, I'm not going to pick up the Legos, I'd be like, if you don't pick up the Legos, you'll lose dessert. This time I would say, okay, it's up to you, the choice is yours. If you don't pick up the Legos, then I'm going to put them in a bag and they're going to disappear for a while. So that was logically connected to the misbehavior. You know, it's not tended to, we're trying to teach our kids to be responsible, not to just blindly be obedient because I'm going to make you feel pain somehow or make you uncomfortable if you don't do what I want you to do. So that's the difference, and this takes us out of the role of being the punisher. Logical consequences are administered in a calm and firm manner. You're not angry, you're just, you might be angry inside, but you don't show it, because once you start to show that you're upset, then you're getting into a power struggle with your kids without even realizing it, and this is hard. So I have my sort of calm down place I go in the bathroom, and I lock the door because nobody can get there, and I can just take a few breaths, which is also another great thing to teach your kids when they're younger. When nobody's upset, you can take them and say, what would be a good calm down place for you? So rather than a timeout, have them take some ownership and pick the part of the house where they'd like to go, and that's their calm down place. So that's another little thing I just wanted to tell you. So it's going to be administered in a calm manner. You're calmly going to say, okay, if you're going to choose not to pick up the Legos, then they're going to go away for a little while. The choice is yours. As opposed to being delivered in an atmosphere of anger and resentment. And then logical consequences are, they're respectful. You're saying you've made a choice, and there's going to be a consequence of your choice. Whereas punishment is really pretty disrespectful when you look at it. And logical consequences allow the child to participate. We're saying to them, you're in the driver's seat, you're making the choice. Whereas punishment is really just dictated by authority. You do what I say, or else you're going to lose dessert. So here's the guidelines. First thing you're going to do is you're going to ask your child for help. I would like you to pick up the Legos for me. Would you please do that? And if you're not getting a response, you're going to give a choice. The choice is an either or choice if you want to stop the behavior. Okay, either you pick up the Legos in the next 3 minutes, or else I'm going to put them in a bag and they're going to have to go away for a while. So the choice is yours, either or. That's if you want to diffuse the behavior. Either you stop punching your brother in the kitchen, or you're going to have to leave the common area. That kind of thing. Either you stop speaking to me in that manner, or you're going to have to go to your calm down place for a little while. The choice is yours. When we want our kids to do something, it's going to be called a when-then choice, and we'll talk about that in a second. When you guys have finished helping put the dishes in the dishwasher, then you can go watch your movie. But the work comes before play. It's really when-then. Make sure that the consequence is logical. We talked about that. And give a choice that you can live with. If it's going to be taking away something, I mean, again, you want to make sure it's a choice that you can live with and you feel good about, the choice that you're giving your child. Sometimes you might need to take a minute to think about it, because in the heat of the moment it can be hard to come up with a choice. I oftentimes I'm having a problem with my child. It's pretty consistent. Maybe it's getting homework done or something. When I'm driving in my car and I know that it's going to be a problem later on that afternoon, I'll kind of think about how am I going to handle it when I'm not in that moment, because a lot of the things are repetitive, or you know they'll come up again. Keep your tone firm and calm, and then give the choice one time and then act. Because if you start to get into that, in 3 minutes, I'm gonna kind of take the Legos away, and then next minute you come back again. In 3 minutes, suddenly it's half an hour and you still haven't got anywhere. So give the choice one time and then act. And expect testing. That's human nature. Your kids are gonna wonder, are you gonna do something? Are you gonna follow through? They're not bad kids. We all do that. That's human nature. Let's see what'll happen. Is it really, is she really going to take away the Legos? Okay, so either or choices we just talked about. You want to extinguish the behavior. So for me, my kids have been dumping all of their backpacks and stuff right by the front door rather than putting them in the mudroom. So an either or choice that's either you start putting your stuff in the mudroom, or I'm going to take it, put it in a bag, and you're going to leave it upstairs for a week, and you can bring it upstairs or downstairs. Logically connected. either you stop punching your sister while I'm driving the car, or you're going to have to go to bed earlier, right? Because you clearly must be tired, or else you would be behaving this way.
You can't say, oh, we have to walk to school.
That's not a logical connection.
Yeah, well, no, it could be. If someone's close enough and you feel comfortable.
10 miles, okay?
Oh.
In the snow?
Yeah. There's usually times I wanted to.
No, I lived on Decatur Island, so.
Many of us did. I did too. And then the one bench choices takes two events that are going to occur anyway, and it orders them in a way that work gets done before play. My son, he likes to go be at the skating club, that he can skate outside on Friday nights. Monday I asked him to get his room cleaned. It wasn't getting done. I said, on Friday, if it's not done, you're not going. That has to be done before you can go. Tuesday, kept going. Right, we finally get to Thursday. I start Friday night. He's got his gear on. He's ready to go out the door. And I said, "Oh, how about your room?" What do you mean? And I said, "You know, the room we've been talking about all week." And so I go, "Hold on a second." And my husband had come home and he didn't know the background on all this, and he was about to drive him. And I went up to the room. Of course, nothing had done. I said, "I'm sorry, you're not going until it's done." At which point, he hated me. I was the worst parent in the world. I was so mean, screaming tirade. And literally this had gone on. He knew what was going on. And I just stood my ground and I said, and I didn't at that point get into him with how he was speaking to me. That was a separate issue. And a lot of times our kids will start screaming at us because they're unhappy. Just ignore it. Don't take the bait and deal with that component later. Just let that go and stay to the task on hand, which is when the room's clean, you may go. And my husband was like, "What is going on here?" And I just said, I explained it later to him. My son went, he did his thing, he cleaned the room, I looked at it, and I said, "You may go now." He left, he was still mad at me. He went, he played, he came home that night, he got ready for bed, and when he was ready for bed, I went in and I talked to him, and I said, "I really don't like the way you talked to me. It was really unkind, it was really, I know, Mom, I was wrong, I'm sorry." And I said, and they know it's wrong, but sometimes they just can't stop doing it because they don't want to do what you want them to do. So the bottom line is, if you don't stop it at that second, the disrespectful screaming, it doesn't mean they've gotten away with it. Focus on the task that isn't being done, get that task done, and then you're going to revisit later about. Yes?
Can you downsize the task, like pick up your clothes because I'm doing laundry in the morning.
Yes.
The next day, those dishes that have gathered around your computer screen.
Yes.
So that by Thursday there is no more issue.
Yes.
But you've won a victory each day.
Yes, that is brilliant. That's brilliant. And each time our kids.
I never did that. I never did that.
It's hard.
All or nothing.
You ready to start over, right?
It's very
now with grandchildren.
It's not easy. It's not easy. But it does work. Yes.
Okay, well, what about the response to my daughter where, it almost winds up being back to the dictator. In other words, she doesn't like the two choices. She sees exactly what's going on. She sees it as saying A or B, and I get, "You're not the judge." That's what she says. You're not, because somehow she got judge as boss. You're not the judge. And finally it does come back to, "I'm sorry, I'm your parent, this is what you have to do."
Yeah.
I've given you a choice between A or B. How do you respond if your kids do that? To say, "Well, I don't like the choices you're giving me."
I think at that point, if they're logical choices, and you're not just trying to be mean, right? Like,
no,
let's
it's
try
not
to
the
get
right
it done.
one, or whatever.
I think that's the response is, you know what, in our house you have certain responsibilities and the work does need to get done before the play, and you have these two choices and you're going to decide, and I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Like I had somebody say, I love this one, the why not, and I love this response. She said, "You don't really care why, you just want me to change my mind." And that's true, and that's it. And she said, "And that's it, I'm not changing my mind." Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I love that idea about when you give the choices. I do that a lot. However, I like the idea as well as saying, when I say to my daughter, I say to her, "I'm done talking." She knows exactly what that means, because it's not like I'm going to say it a third or fourth or fifth. That means it is what it is. Your choices are your choices. I'm standing my ground, and that's it. You make the decision as a parent. Because just like you said, if you continue, it'll be the struggle back and forth, and it's like, you know, nobody's going to be happy. So you stand your ground, you say, I'm done talking, and that's it.
Which is a great phrase. I'm done. Like if you have a good cue phrase,
Correct.
you know, that's very good. She knows that that's your cue, and
Absolutely.
it's hard to disengage, isn't it? Like
Oh,
it takes practice, right?
It so is. And another thing that you know, I do. I'm sorry. I have to say this is that you mentioned earlier about taking that time out or giving them that time out. What I'll say is that, listen, at this point, mommy needs a time out.
Yes.
So it's true because sometimes situations happen where you feel like, oh my gosh, and I say, you know what, go to your room, mommy's gonna go take a time out, and I do, as opposed to saying, you go to your time out, I say, you know what, you go to your room, do something, whatever you choose to do, as long as you're not burning your room down,
Right.
I'm gonna take a time out. And then I'll revisit it, because you get so frustrated at times,
Yeah.
and then you want to refrain from the anger,
Yep.
and then react to be too reactive.
Yep.
So I give myself a timeout.
I say I have to go to my calm down place now.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
You're absolutely right. Yes, and that's important to have that place
absolutely,
because you can't think
yes.
in that moment. Your brain
Yes.
really does shut down. Yes, and they're very, very good at good ideas. Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Because you have to solve it for me.
Yes.
And then the other thing is, when my kids were little, they're 20 and 15 now, and I gave myself timeouts, I found out from them after years gone by that it scared them in a good
yes.
way. Because they went,
Uh-oh.
what's mommy doing?
Yes.
Oh, we were really bad, I guess. When you went and gave yourself a timeout room, we just kind of went, we froze. Good.
And you don't have to feel bad.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. About yesterday, my 15-year-old was told she could not go to her aunt and uncle's and brother's house. They have no children. They love my kids like they're their own. You may not go, Bailey, until your room is picked up. Is your room picked up? I trusted her, and I said, and you know, just shoving the pajama pants in the drawer or put them in everything that's clean, really, in the laundry, that's not my idea, you know, picked up. And she came down, and everything straightened up? Yes. I didn't go up to check, but today I did, this morning, because I was looking for sunglasses that I thought maybe she borrowed. And so I looked up and I was just so disappointed and angry, and now she's still there, and I'm deciding in my head, how do I not attack and go,
Trust but
Yeah.
verify.
It's a great question, and this is stuff that I go through all the time, you know, and that's the thing I feel like with kids, like, it's never going to stop, and if you're having problems, that's normal, and that's like, we're always going to have problems, and you put out one fire and there's another one, and what you're talking about, and you feel hurt, like, I trusted you, and I think I would let the whole thing go. She's there, you don't want to, when she comes back, you can just say, I would bring her upstairs and just say, what do you think about this room? And just, this is where I have a hard time. What do you think about this room? And then get her to see, do you think it's acceptable? And then see what she has to say, and then just, kind of see what she's saying, and just say, I have to tell you, I'm really disappointed because I asked you to do something and I trusted you, and, you didn't do it, and it's what hurts me most is that I trusted you, and I believed you would do it. And I said, and to say that, it really hurt, it really hurt. It really hurt. So, but if, maybe she thinks, I don't know, that's the first thing I said, does she think it's acceptable, or do you think she knows?
She knows.
She knows. Then I think that would be the way to handle it, and then I would say, I would like you to clean this room to a point that you believe is, we both know is acceptable, and then we'll talk about it later. But then I would just, again, just follow up. I love you. I trust you. We don't, with the people we love, trust is really important. So it's not really about the room. And I think just that dialogue. But I agree. That hurts, right?
Thank you, because I almost ripped off a text like before church early. Just like, once I finally just went, stifle it, Becky.
Yeah, but you know something,
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I just want to say something really quickly on that too. I think something that you can do as well is say to her, when you ask mommy to do XYZ, and if mommy follows through with it, and I asked you, however, to do something, you didn't follow through, how do you think mommy feels about you being dishonest about following through with the task I asked you to do? You know what I mean? Like kind of twist, having her see it from your standpoint, if you will. You know, identifying something like, say, when you ask mommy to get your shoe, for example, I get your shoe.
Right.
You know what I mean? Having something that's important to you, or important to her, that she wants from you to identify with.
She can count on
And then
you.
she can count on you for it, but therefore, at this point, you couldn't actually count on her because she was...
You've always been there for her to count on.
Correct.
Yes, good, very good point.
Yeah, I use, trust me, I use that.
Yeah.
It works.
And you want to play it forward. I couldn't trust you on this thing. There are so many other things coming up at age 15.
Yes.
You're going to want me to trust
Yes.
you. Can I go to that party and then go in the car?
This is the dialogue. This is the dialogue the dictator doesn't have, and you did. You know, you had that. You refrained from exactly. It's the dialogue. It's the exactly right. I know. Okay, so I'm going to give you the last ones before we go. This is my last thing. So catch our kids doing the right thing, especially after they've been disciplined. Okay, so the next time you say it's time to get ready for bed, and they do it, you're going to be doing cartwheels. And they're going to get the extra book. When they do the small things well, you're going to applaud them, you're going to recognize them, you're going to do cartwheels, and then they're going to keep doing it. But if you don't notice, they're going to slip backward. And then lastly, communication. I'm going to try and do this quickly, but we want to avoid communication blocks, and those are words, tone of voice, or body language that shut our kids down from talking to us. And the new body language is the phone. You know, get that out of there if you're going to be talking to your kids. And it's basically, how are we looking when we're talking? When we want our kids to talk to us, it's sitting down and letting them know we're there to really hear them. So starting with active communications, 5 steps. And when our kids, the basic point we're trying to get to is, when our kids come to us with a problem, yes, they're hurting and we want to stop them from hurting, so oftentimes we'll try to take it over for them. But we're not really doing them a disservice by taking it over. So what we're going to do is we're going to listen actively, and we're going to help them solve the problem. We're going to work with them to help them solve the problem, and then they feel confident in their abilities to solve problems for themselves. So listen actively. You're going to listen fully. Okay, you do that by giving your full attention. You may leave the kitchen, go to a separate room, and just sit down with that child where there's no distractions, and you're going to listen fully to what's going on. You're going to keep your own talk to a minimum, so when your lips are moving, your ears don't hear. So that's that hard part, because you want to take over. Just don't talk and try to listen. Acknowledge what you're hearing, just with simple phrases like, I see, yes, I hear you. Okay, this allows our kids to, okay, they really are listening to me. So that's active listening. The next thing we're going to do is listen for feelings. While it's important to get the facts of the story straight, it's also more important to, how is our child perceiving the facts? I didn't get invited to Amy's birthday party. Okay, so we know that's the fact, but what is our child most upset about? We're going to try and listen closely. Are they upset because they're embarrassed because everyone got invited and they didn't? Or are they upset because they really thought Amy was a good friend and Amy just completely dissed them right now? Maybe they don't really care about Amy, so we're going to try to figure out what is bothering our child most. So the facts are important, but what we're trying to get to is, how is our child feeling about what happened? And then we can help them. Listen with empathy is just sharing the other person's feelings. So if our kid's feeling sad, it's okay to feel sad with them. It's okay to do that. And then they're going to want to talk to us more. Okay, so connecting feelings to content. So this is where we become an emotional mirror for our child. While there's a lot of feeling words in the English language, they're not words that we use often and every day. Google has a whole list. If you Google feeling words, they'll come up with a list, like ashamed, proud, anxious, angry, whatever. But these are words that are hard to identify, particularly for young children. So you could say to them, if your child's talking, I didn't get invited to this party, and you're looking and they seem to be sad, you could say, you seem to be feeling hurt. At which point they'll say, yes, I do feel hurt. And then bingo, you got the right emotion. Or they might say, I don't feel hurt. I'm really angry about this. It was really wrong. So when we can get to the essence of what they're feeling by throwing out a couple of these, and they'll tell us if we're on the right track or not, then that really helps us get to the next step, which is we're going to look for alternatives and evaluate consequences. So helping our children become effective problem solvers. We live in a world that changes all the time. They've got to be able to problem solve. They've got to be able to work with other people and cooperate. This is how we're going to teach them to do it. So a kid may rush to do whatever solution immediately pops into their head. That's normal. That's kids. They might say, well, so at which point Amy's not talking to you, right? Or Amy didn't invite you to the birthday party. At which point you're going to say, wow, so you seem really hurt. Yes, I'm hurt. What do you think you should do about that? What do you think you should do? Rather than us saying, here's what you should do. At which point your child might say, well, I hate her and I'm never going to speak to her again. At which point you would say, they have this palms up technique. You could do that. Okay, but then you're going to put out your other palm and say, what else could you do? Because, you know, if you did decide to hate Amy, that would take a lot of energy and you'd probably feel pretty awful about it, right? What else could you do? What else could you do? And they will often take a second and come up with something that is pretty workable, that really is an acceptable solution. And if they don't, then we're going to help guide them on a way, give them some ideas. And finally, before they go off to school the next day, we're going to say, what do you intend to do when you see Amy on the playground today? What are you going to do? So we know they're on the right track. We want to teach our kids we can't always control what happens to them, but they can control how they react to it. Bad things happen, but we still have a modicum of control. It's how we react. What are we going to do when these things happen? And then follow up later, how to go with. Now, if it's a really young child, I wouldn't really necessarily bring back up the icky thing, which is say, how did the playground go, or something like that. Like, say someone took away a toy, because little kids can often move on quickly, so we don't want to bring them back to the unhappy place. Like, oh, when Johnny took your tail the other day, wait, oh, I forgot about it. Oh, yeah. You know, but basically, how to go with that. And then, okay, so the last thing, basically we talked about, to remember that you matter most, that we're going to give our kids choices to diffuse a power struggle, but to also teach them to be confident decision makers. We're going to take ourselves out of the role of being a punisher with logical consequences, getting our kids to see you make a choice, and there's a consequence from that choice. It could be a good one or a bad one. And then we've got communication to help us problem solve. And lastly, you matter most. Okay, so my son's 12, and you know he was out in the backyard and he was throwing a lacrosse ball, and I thought, I'm going to take my own advice. I'm going to stop everything. I'm going to sit and watch this for a minute because he's going to be gone in a few years. I'm just going to, it's a gorgeous fall day. I'm going to sit and I'm just going to watch him. And you know, how hard is it to stop, right? We're all running around like crazy. I'm like, I'm going to stop. I go outside and he goes, Mom, I want you to throw the lacrosse ball with me. And I said, you know, honey, I'm really not very good. He goes, I don't care, just go get the stick. And I'm not. I probably picked up a stick for the first time like when I was 37 or something. I'm terrible. And so I got it, and we started throwing the ball back and forth, and I dropped like every two, and you know, and he was so happy. And I stood there and I felt this like incredible moment that I wanted to share with you, and I realized it didn't matter if I stunk at lacrosse. He didn't want me to watch him. He just wanted me to engage with him and throw the ball, and it didn't matter if I dropped it. And I was like, I wanted to share that with everybody and just tell you, it doesn't matter if you're like a terrible dancer. Turn on the kitchen and dance. And if you draw back, it doesn't matter. Our kids don't care if we're not good at this stuff. They just want to do it with us. They want to be with us. And the last thing I wanted was to leave you with was just that it is really hard. We have a lot of stuff flying at us constantly in this world that we live in right now. And we owe it to ourselves and to our kids to build these fences. You know, and to take that time with them, because when we have that disengaged time, it says to them, we love you, we value you, and we want to be with you. And that's it. So thank you.